Now that I have my two pieces laid out on the pattern, I really like the way the grain direction is going now. I think that'll look better flowing the same direction all the way through this section of the pattern. So I'll go ahead and change these arrows to look like this. I'll do that as I continue going on. This is piece number 3. I'll go ahead and trace this out, making sure I make contact with the wood as I trace, because this is the critical piece here. I've got a little bit of an adjustment to make here from the cutting, so we'll just bring that out like that. Go ahead and finish the tracing, which I'm going to have to fix that one, but I'll do that off camera. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and trace out and cut all the rest of the pieces, and I'll do it in rapid succession. Now that we have our project all cut out, it's time to start the sanding and shaping. I want to show you some of the tools I'm going to be using, and you might be surprised a little bit because I don't have a whole bunch of fancy tools to do my Intarsia with. I don't have the oscillating sanders and the drum sanders and, you know, the big pneumatic sanders and all that stuff. I basically just use this stuff right here. This here is something random orbit sander that pretty much any woodworker would have, so I'm not going to say too much about that. This is a sanding mop. It's 220 grit. It works great for sanding all kinds of different shape, odd things and stuff like that. Not just for Intarsia, but any project you do. It's probably a good idea to have one of these handy. This comes in a kit. This right here is what I use for 95% of my sanding. These are called hook and loop sanding pads or disc. They're 3 inches in diameter, and you simply take these little sanding pads and change them just like that. It comes in a bunch of different grits. How I use these is I put them in either my drill press or a hand drill. I actually use both. If I'm working on a big project and don't want to have to take it over to the drill press, and I just have a little touch-up sanding to do, I'll just put them on my hand drill and bring the sanding disc over to the project and sand them on the table. They work really great, as you'll see. And then this is the only tool I've bought for Intarsia. It's like a Dremel tool, only I have the flexible handle here. Some people, you know, Fordham has a selection of these. They're pretty much very expensive. I bought this one from Harbor Freight. It was less than $50. What I do is it'll take any of the Dremel sanding disc. So I keep a couple different Dremel packs handy, and I can put whatever Dremel bit I want in here, sanding or regular carving burrs, and it works out great. And what I really like about it is you got this little foot switch. You turn it on and take your foot off and do your carving, whatever you need. And you can't see it, but the motor is hanging up here, so that's just where I have it located. I also have a belt sander over there that I use, and it's just too big and bulky to bring it over here, and I'm sure you've all seen a belt sander before. I'm going to show you some of the projects I've done, just so you realize that Intarsia can be done without all that expensive and multiple types of sanding equipment. Okay, well, I guess we're ready to start shaping and sanding, so let's get to it. Okay, now before we actually take this over to the sander, we need to have a little mark on here to know where we're going to sand to. In nature, a shell tapers down this way. You could absolutely leave this flat and just round over the edges and it would still look pretty good. But I like to just take a little step further, and I want to taper it so it looks more like a real shell. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need a starting point. We're going to start with piece number 1. That is our main piece, and all we're concerned about right now is this section from 1 through number 6. So I already did it, but I'll do it again so you guys can see it. Put a number arbitrarily about 1/4 of an inch down, put a mark there, and then on the end I'll put a mark down there too, and I'll carry that mark over to the other side, and the same thing arbitrarily about 1/4 of an inch down. I put the tape on here simply to hold these 6 pieces together so that I can go ahead and mark them properly. I want to just move these out of the way because they're not needed right now. Then what I'll do is I'll just, since they're all taped together on the one side anyway, I hope you can see this, we'll just do something like this. Okay, I'll get my ruler up here, line the marks up a little bit, and simply take my pencil and draw a line on each piece going up. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a guide, just to give you an idea how far you want to sand down to, and keep the taper at the same time. Okay, that looks good. But as you can see, we got a nice little line here now that we can sand down to. Okay, so now we're ready to take it over to the sander, and that's the next step. A couple quick things. Just so you know, I know you can't see it, but I did bring all 6 pieces, and I've got them sitting right over here right next to me, so they're handy. I also have all my pads laid out. I actually have a 60, a 150, a 100, a 220, and a 400 sanding pad here, so I can just easily grab them and change them as we go. I also went ahead, well, on that piece it's kind of hard to see. Let me show you this one. I went ahead and carried the line over from each side that I marked, and I did it on both sides. Again, it's just a guide for me to be able to see where I want to stop sanding. What I'm going to do, just so you know, I'm going to round over these edges first. You know, Mother Nature designed a shell curved for the most part, and she didn't use a ruler, so none of these lines don't have to be perfect. And I'm going to sand over the top, leave a hump, and then sand back down to the other side. Okay, so I also have my drill press set for the lowest setting right now, because you don't want the sanding pad going too fast. It'll wear the sanding pad out, and if your fingers do hit the pad, it'll burn it a little more, but you don't have to worry too much about that. I hit my fingers on the pad all the time, and it really doesn't hurt, unless you keep it there and try to sand your skin off, which would be kind of silly. So anyway, I'm going to start off with piece number 1. Okay, it's butternut, so it's a little bit harder, and I'm going to go ahead and use a number 100 to start with to see how well that works. So I'm just going to take my pad, a little sand, get it up here as nicely as possible so it's pretty much even all the way around. Whoops, that's not. Okay, that should be good enough. It's going to get a little noisy. I really can't avoid that because I really do want to show you and talk through how I'm going to do this, so we'll just have to deal with it. And if you notice, I have a cardboard box back here. There is a reason for that, because even if you have a real firm grip on these, especially on the smaller pieces, you do have a tendency for these pieces to go flying, and I just have it back there, so the cardboard box back there to catch them, so I don't have to go running all over the place every time one goes flying. But I'm sure you'll see this in the video because I'll leave it in. Alright, here we go. Okay, I'm going to start simply by placing my pad flat and then turning it over. I normally have a fan blowing behind me, so the dust is going to be a little bit, make this a little bit more difficult. But we just simply See, there we go. Okay, first piece down. Okay, we just pick it back up and continue going. Right on down till we get to our line. I'll bring it around this side. And now dig it. Bring it down. If you're one of those that don't want to breathe too much dust, you can go ahead and put a dust mask on at this point. I can't because I'm trying to talk through this. And normally I would have my garage door open and a fan blowing behind me. But it's just not working well here. Okay, there we go again. Part of the reason this is happening is because I've got my sander set so low. Actually, I wanted to go ahead and stop the tape right now. Speed my sander up one notch. Because this is speed the drill press up one notch because this is just a little too slow right now. I went ahead and sped my drill press up a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit noisier. Plus I put the fan behind me. Hopefully it'll keep some of the sawdust down so that you'll be able to see the lines better. So let's go ahead and see if we can keep this going now. Again, just sanding the edges down to the line. You can see this doesn't take a whole lot of time. You know, this, well, the 100 grit I'm using here is taking this wood off really nice and quickly. Now that we're down to our lines for the most part on the edges, now we'll just simply roll it. Roll. Roll. Roll just a little bit on each one, give it a little roll, because again, Mother Nature doesn't make things straight, so we want a curve here, we want a little hump. Okay, and there we go, that was as simple as that. That piece is pretty much done. I will go ahead after I've got all the other pieces sanded down just like I did here. I'll go ahead and then go up to a 150 grit and then 220, and I'll even hit it with a 400 in the end. So let me go ahead, I'll sand the rest of these down using the same technique I just used. It's not going to be any different other than the cuts are going to get smaller or thicker. So what will happen here, this is piece number 4 I just happened to pick up. I've got more wood to take off here now, so in order to make the process a little faster, I'll switch from the 100 grit I'm using and I'll go to a 60 grit, simply because it'll remove the wood faster and it'll make the process a little bit quicker. But then I'll go ahead and go back through the steps of going through the 150, 220, and 400. I go up to 400 simply because the kit included the 400. So I figured, why not use it? So I use it, and it really makes everything nice and shiny. So I'll go ahead and finish this up, and we'll see you in a few minutes. I just wanted to pop in here real quick while I was sanding down the rest of these and point one thing out. As you can see here, I'm getting pretty thick with the wood here that I got to take off. So instead of trying to do that all with the sanding disc, I'll just take the piece and throw it on my belt sander over here. I have an 80 grit belt on it. I just throw it on and just turn it upside down. I took the 5 off, and I'll just continue that until I get close to this line. You don't have to sit here and watch all that. But anyway, again, I just wanted to point that out, and that's how I'll finish up the rest of these 2 pieces. I'll hit them on the belt sander to knock a lot of that wood off quickly, and then I'll finish it up on the sanding disc. As you can see, I went ahead and finished up all the shaping. Not only did I do this, I also did this. Most of this was simple round over shaping, you know, not really hard to do. This here is a little bit more complicated. The the inner red cedar piece. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that, show you how I did it so that you'll understand the little technique I used. It's really not hard and doesn't take very long. So we'll go over to the drill press and go ahead and shape that piece out. I put an indicator mark here so I know how far to come down to on this piece. And I just put a little arrow here so I don't get confused and I know the direction is here, even though that'll be gone relatively quickly. I have a 60 grit pad on here. This is aromatic cedar, so not only is it going to smell good as I do this, the 60 grit pad will take it down pretty quickly. So let's get busy here. What I'm going to do is I bring the pad up here, leave a little bit of a lip, and just keep coming down like this until I get down to my mark. And I want to have a little curve here because the inside of the seashell is curved. So I'm going to keep a curve and bring it down that mark. So let's get going here. As you can see, it's knocking this cedar off really quick with the 60 grit. This will probably only take about 5 minutes. But so you don't have to sit here for 5 minutes and watch this, I'm going to go ahead and speed the video up. I think you got the general idea of what I'm doing here right now. So just sit back and enjoy the quicker video. That looks pretty good to me. So now I think we're ready to start gluing some of these pieces up. Now that everything's cut, shaped, and put together, well, almost put together, we just need to do the gluing up. So it's pretty much straightforward. I'll use these two pieces as an example. I use Aleene's Fast Grab Tacky Glue. Any of the Aleene's glues are great. I like the little bottles just because they're small and they're great for the Intarsia stuff. I also have big bottles that I use for refills, to refill these bottles so I don't have to keep going back and forth or buying a bunch of little bottles. But they're just really convenient to use and they work fine. You know, not the strongest glue in the world, but for what we're doing here, it works great, especially when you add in the fact that we're going to put a backer on this. That'll be the next step. Once all the glue is dry, we'll put a backer on it and we'll glue the backer down with some Titebond too, and this thing won't go anywhere. So anyway, the procedure I use is take one piece, put the glue on the bottom of the piece, okay, and you can use your finger or something else. I use my finger, just wipe it around. I know I have a little bit of a gap here, so I just want to put a little bit there. And then you put the two pieces together. Whoops. You know, this really isn't the hardest part of the job. A little time consuming. You know, if you get a little somewhere, wipe it off. There are instances where you might need to pull a little bit together because sometimes the wood just doesn't stay the way it was when you cut it, and that's done simply enough by putting a piece of tape on one piece real good, pull it tight, and it'll pull the other piece in and it'll glue up nicely like that. Just make sure you don't wiggle your piece like I did. Okay, we'll go and add another piece on here just to keep it from moving. It's the same thing. Put it down on one piece and then pull tight and wrap it over. Yes, I like to use tape, but like I think I said it before, it's a great little tool. when you're working by yourself and you need another hand, tape is great. Hey, I like that. Okay, anyway, I'm going to glue the rest of this up. When we come back, we'll cut a backer for it, put the backer on it, and then we'll be done. Oh, we still put some finish on it. I'll put a little bit of finish on it, and then we'll be done. Now that it's all glued up and the glue is dry, I did go ahead and turn it upside down. I just hit it with my random orbit sander just to smooth it out a little bit and get rid of some of the excess glue on the back. It's time for the backer now. I went ahead and cut a piece for the backer. Simply, this is a piece of 1/4 inch plywood that I had laying around, piece of scrap. It'll work great for this. It just happened to fit just right. I simply laid the shell onto the board, traced it out, and then took it over to the scroll saw and just cut 1/4 inch inside the line. And this is what you come up with. Now we're just going to glue this down. I've got my Titebond 2 here and my little Babe Bot, which I love these little glue bottles, they're great. Just simply throw some glue on it. You don't want to get too carried away here, but you want to have enough to hold all the pieces together too. So just get some all around it. Flip it onto the shell, and then just give it a couple clamps to let's get it lined up. Okay, we'll let that dry for about a half hour, and then we'll go ahead and spray a little bit of finish on it. Now that the backer's on, it's time to give it a little spray. I've just got Deft clear satin here. Hopefully you can see that. So get it at pretty much any of the big box hardware stores. Okay, here we go. Let's see what this baby's going to look like. Looks pretty good. Alright, well, we'll let that coat dry. I'm going to do that about 3, maybe 4 more times. And this project is pretty much done. Hey scrollers, I'm back. I hope this series was helpful. Most of all, I hope it inspired you to try your hand at Intarsia. Before we go, I have a few more things I just want to add. As you just saw, when it comes to finishing, I use a simple spray lacquer. The spray lacquer is much easier to apply than gels or brush on polyurethanes. I also find the lacquer does not yellow like the polys do. There's nothing worse than having a nice white wood like aspen or maple turn yellow after you apply a polyurethane to it, because the oil in there will yellow the wood. It really can ruin an entire project. And with enough coats of the spray lacquer, all your little nooks and crannies will get filled up with no problem, just like it does with the gel or the brush-ons. Some people like to sand the lacquer in between coats very lightly with either a fine grit sandpaper or a brown paper bag. I only sand the last layer. The other layers don't really seem to matter that much. I prefer using Deft lacquer, but any brand will work. But try to stay away from the glossies. The glossies just kind of make your project look cheap. The really cool thing about the lacquer is it dries within 10 to 15 minutes. So after 10 to 15 minutes, you can put another coat on and you can have your project finished by the end of the day, instead of having to wait overnight to let your coat thoroughly dry of the brush on and then have to wait another day for it to dry again if you're going to put multiple coats on. Now, a bit about patterns. In my opinions, patterns are simply guides. You know, it's like a map. A map will get you from point A to point B, but there can be several different routes to get to point B, and it's up to you to choose the right route for you. If you want to make changes to a pattern, if you're not particularly happy with the pattern, go ahead, make the changes. Not going to hurt anything. It's completely okay to change the pattern by removing pieces or changing shapes a little bit Do whatever you need to do to make you feel comfortable with the pattern. Just because it's a pattern doesn't mean you can't get creative with it. Woodworking and scrolling is all about creativity. It's okay to put your own ideas into whatever it is you're making. And this goes the same for shaping pieces. When you're shaping pieces, my style of shaping is more of a 3D. I like my pieces to take on a 3D, as much of a 3D effect as I possibly can. But you don't have to do it that way. If you just want to round over the edges and, you know, get your piece done and make it look good, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're totally entitled to do that. You don't have to do it like I do, just because this is the way I do it. It's the way I enjoy doing it. There's really no right way or wrong way to making Intarsia. It's how you want to do it is the way that's right, and how you have your project envisioned in your head. Okay, now if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to leave them in the comment section. And if you like this video, please like it. And if you would like, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, happy scrolling.